This new KBLA Talk 1580 initiative to promote your business. As a black-owned small business, you don't want to miss this unique opportunity to gain new customers on KBLA Talk 1580. For more information, contact us today at smb@kbla1580.com. That's smb@kbla1580.com. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
And if I share with you my story, would you share your shadow with me? Time to get hey.
That's the Godfather, James Brown, living in America. We are indeed, and I am delighted in this hour, as promised, to have Dr. Jill Stein, independent Green Party president candidate. I just talked to Cornel West not long ago. He's an independent. Jill Stein is the Green Party president candidate, and I'm honored to have her in studio. Later in this hour, we'll be joined by her running mate, Professor Butch Ware. He's on the East Coast campaigning today, so he'll join us on the phone later in this conversation. So pleased to have both of them, Dr. Jill Stein and Professor Butch Ware, coming to you in this hour. It has been a long time since I've seen you in person. Dr. Stein, how are you?
I'm doing great, and I got to say, you look about 10 years younger.
Oh, no.
So,
all this gray hair I have now? All this gray hair.
Oh, man. Well, everything else is just right on track.
No, it's good to see you. And thanks for coming in. I deeply appreciate it.
My honor.
Let me just jump right in and make the most of the time. And I'm doing this not because I mean to put you on the defensive at the outset of the conversation. I'm doing it because I've already shared with our audience 2 hours ago when I first came on the air today that in the middle of the night last night I received an email from the DNC. It came from a private email. It did not come from a DNC email as I typically receive. I would not name the person who sent the email, but it came to me from a DNC official. And let me just read what this email says. I am reaching out from the DNC because it is my understanding that Tavis Smiley will be interviewing Jill Stein this week. I wanted to put a few things of note on your radar screen for it being, of course, the conversation. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you. And so there are about 5 or 6 things here that the DNC evidently wants me to ask Jill Stein. So in full transparency, these are not my questions to start this conversation. These are from the DNC, and I want to give Dr. Jill Stein a chance to respond to them, and maybe we'll get into some conversation about what it means that the DNC is tracking this thing the way they are to send me questions to ask Dr. Jill Stein. I'll leave that, as my grandmother, Big Mama said, we're going to leave that lay where the good Lord done flung it. I'm going to leave it right where it is, and I'll let you process that for yourself. But these are the things that the Democratic Party wants me to ask of Dr. Jill Stein. The first thing on the list, no surprise, Dr. Stein, I quote from this email. This week, the New York Times reported that even Jill Stein's family doesn't want her to run because of the risk her candidacy poses in helping to send Donald Trump back to the White House. Your response?
Well, first of all, you can leave my family out of this. Thank you very much. In terms of that supposed risk to the White House, I think there's a real risk to America right now from not having a democracy, from not having a right to vote, from being told by the powers that be who've been throwing everyday Americans under the bus for decades now, who've inflicted incredible poverty, disparities, endless war, which is robbing our budget blind. I think there's a real risk to America here in not having a debate, in not actually having a democracy. So let me just say at the outset, they've got this backwards. But furthermore, let's look at that myth that an independent candidate or third party, whatever you want to call it, candidates such as myself or Dr. West, that we do not have a role in this, that we are illegitimate, that we are stealing votes. Those votes do not belong to the political establishment, which has done such a horrible job of serving the public, and in which the vast majority of Americans, now it's around 60%, for many years have been saying they want other options, especially in the presidential race. So it's absolutely nuts for the Democratic Party, in particular, mostly the Democratic Party, to be telling voters that they own their votes, that the Democrats own your votes, and that you should vote according to the marching orders rather than your needs. But let me address the myth that we are taking votes away. There have been a couple of polls recently, and I don't know if you've heard about them. One is this Center Square Voters' Voice poll, and there have been two of these now that show, in fact, that the net result of our campaign is to be taking votes away from Donald Trump because the Arab American and the Muslim American community is not voting for Kamala, and in the absence of another option, a lot of them are going to vote for Trump. So we are essentially competing with Trump and taking votes away from Donald Trump because he promises to complete the job of genocide that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are committing.
So that's your way of saying you do not buy their argument, the DNC's argument, that you're taking votes away from Kamala.
So I do not buy that argument on general principle. Mm-hmm. We don't take votes away. We're giving people a reason to vote who otherwise won't vote. And in 2020, the last presidential race, 1 out of every 3 eligible voters did not vote. And these are largely poor, of color, and lower and younger. Don't they deserve choices too? So these are not votes taken away. So I challenge the basic premise, but also the particulars. They're just like out of date. They're not keeping up here.
This audience knows I hate the term spoiler. I don't allow people on my program to use that term in reference to you, Cornel West, or anybody else. They're not spoilers. I don't like that. That's my point of view. When we come forward, I do want to stay with this first point before I move on to the other 3 or 4 things they raised here, because we also have the story in the New York Times. And you said leave your family out of it. But I'm coming back to it only because the New York Times did not leave your family out of it. There were people quoted in your family, members of your family, the New York Times quoted in that article. So I do want to come back to that and let you close that loop, and we'll move on to the other 2 or 3 things that the DNC asked me to ask. I don't work for them, and they're not my employer, but you take my point. I want you to hear the concerns the DNC has about Jill Stein on all these state ballots as we move toward November 5th. You're listening to Dr. Jill Stein. I'm glad about it on Tavis, Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis, Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on!
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
Chevy, All the Things 2024 Truck Season Radio 30, code GWMR0294000.
This truck season, think about all the things you can do in a Chevy truck. You'll be able to, or you can even just, with impressive towing, incredible bed and tailgate functionality, and multiple powertrains, Chevy trucks have what you need to get things done. When you want to do it all, Chevy's got you. Chevrolet, together let's drive.
Which superhero movie is this? This is my favorite part, when they all come together in the name of justice.
You know, you could do that too.
Oh yeah? How?
What you just described is what happens when Black folks vote.
Mm-hmm.
When we come together and vote using our power, we win and get leaders who will protect our rights, lower housing costs.
All right, let's go together.
Yeah?
I mean, we gotta unite in the name of justice.
And vote like our lives depend on it.
Paid for by NAACP.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down and get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
You can do it all by yourself, baby girl. What's your name? Let me talk to you. Let me buy you a drink.
Spilled your drink? Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up spills quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less than the leading ordinary brand. So you can get back to your night. Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley in conversation with the Green Party candidate president, Dr. Jill Stein. We are running through this list of the things that the DNC secretly and privately sent to me to ask Dr. Jill Stein, and she showed up today. She's here, and she's taking the fire. She's taking the questions. The first issue was this New York Times story earlier this week that her family doesn't want her to run. I read that story, and so you said earlier, keep your family out of it, but respectfully, the New York Times did not keep your family out of it, and I read the story again. People from your family were quoted in that story. What said you about the story? Is it not true?
I did not read the story.
Okay.
And I will not read the story.
Okay.
Because this is not about my family. This is about me.
According to the Times, your son was quoted in the story saying that they had, I'm paraphrasing here, that they had talked to you, advised you, hoped that you would not run again in this moment.
Let me say that my politics has long diverged from not only my family, but also my social network.
Okay.
And I will say I come from a privileged background. And my values and my politics is not commonplace. Well, it's hard to say. Yeah. But, I have taken the heat for being an advocate for social and economic and racial justice and peace and climate justice. I have taken a very principled stand all my life. And I have long diverged from members of my family and my former social networks and things of that sort. If you're going to challenge power, you're going to take some heat.
I can respect anybody says leave my family out of it. You decide to run based on whatever those whatever that rationale is, and I accept that your family isn't central to your decision. The same thing happened to Bobby Jr. We all know the Kennedy family, by and large, didn't want him in that race. But it's his decision. It's your decision. I just wanted to just ask whether or not.
And I will say that the New York Times, and again, I haven't read the article.
Yeah.
But they're not quoting people who are in support of my campaign and my politics. So I would not take them as as the gospel truth here by any means. They have a political agenda. This was a smear article from the get-go, as the New York Times has always been towards independent politics.
Well, that was the first thing on the list of things the DNC asked me to ask.
And I can be sure that the DNC had a role in that New York Times article and in every other article, because if they are basically telling you, instructing you as a journalist on what you should be saying in this interview, that is absolutely outrage. This is an all-out assault on freedom of the press and freedom of speech. This is this is the opposite of censorship. This is actually election interference and distortion through the press.
Let me correct just one thing. DNC trying to tell Tavis.
Exactly. Let's affirm that.
To tell Tavis
and give a big shout out here to Tavis Smiley for refusing to be given marching orders.
I ain't the one. You send it to me, I'm going to out you for sending it to me. And you better be glad I didn't call your name. And the folk who are copied inside the DNC on the email that was sent to me. That's the dumb part. You send it to me, and then you copy people inside the DNC. Not very smart, but this is what you get when you send stuff to me like this and think I'm going to play your game. And I have nothing against the DNC. I am a registered Democrat, have been on my entire life. That's not the point. There were two other, you recall, earlier this year, there were two African-American hosts who both lost their jobs, one in Milwaukee, one in Philadelphia, for asking questions of then candidate Joe Biden that the DNC had sent to them. And I'm just not that dude. I'm not that person. But since you sent it to me, I'll give her a chance to respond to what obviously concerns you. Issue number 2, watching my time. In an interview in March that I'm again quoting from this email. In an interview in March that was recently unearthed, Jill Stein said she'd be open to pardoning Trump and convicted January 6ers. More details below, Tavis. Let me go below. Quoting from this email. When asked about, and they put this in bold, I'm going to show Jill Stein this right quick. You can't see the name on this. You see the big bold here? Bold, all caps. Yeah. Bold, all caps. When asked about pardoning January 6 rioters, Stein said that she would have to look more carefully at their actual charges and that January 6 was being blown up for political reasons. When Stein was asked if she would pardon Trump if elected, she responded, "What's he guilty of?" Going on to say that many U.S. presidents had committed war crimes as bad as Trump's financial crimes, ultimately saying she'd have to see what he was convicted of and what his sentence was. These are quotes that the DNC is bringing to my attention that you've made about potentially pardoning Donald Trump and January 6 rioters. To that, Dr. Jill Stein, you say what?
So, this is totally taken out of context. That question was posed as part of a laundry list of a number of people for whom pardons might be a potential issue. And whether it was Julian Assange or Edward Snowden, I don't recall, but there were many in that list that were, serious contenders for pardon. So I gave a blanket answer, that everyone merits their day in court. And at the time, my recollection is that at the time, Trump had been convicted of financial crimes related to not filing campaign finance information, not January 6th. So this was not about disrupting the election. It was not about encouraging violence. So this was at a different time with a very different focus at the time. So, my answer was everybody deserves their day in court and, deserves a potential review. I gave a blanket response, and that the decision would depend on each case and the merits of the case and what the convictions were in the case. This was not specifically giving a pass to Donald Trump and January 6ers. So this was totally taken out of context.
Issue number 3 in this email. I quote from the email from the DNC. Earlier this month, she, Jill Stein, told Newsweek falsely that she was not taking GOP help in this race. We put out a statement, we being the DNC apparently, put out a statement noting how false that was with more background here. There's a link in this email for me to see the background. Then we learned this week that she, in fact, paid a lawyer who was involved in cases to overturn the 2020 election results. Dr. Jill Stein.
So the potential involvement of GOP operatives was not at any kind of strategic or meaningful level. I think what they're referring to is that petition gatherers who can come from all political spectrum, all across. And in fact, we hired Democrats to assist with signature collection. This is routine. And I think the case that they're referring to, the campaign was not aware of. Petitions were given to us, which volunteers do all the time. So yes, and then it turns out that one of those gatherers may have been a Republican operative, which we were not aware of at the time. So this happens all the time. Let's look at the real corruption in this system. And by the way, the rules in this system are made by Democrats and Republicans. They're not made by us. And the Democrats announced, in fact, that they had hired an army of lawyers to try to find technical trivia to throw us off the ballot in violation of the spirit of the law, that they would be using the letter of the law, and hired an army of lawyers to throw competitors off the ballot. One of the ways they did that in the 2022 election, they actually impersonated the Green Party. They called people who had signed our petitions, telling them that they were the Green Party and would they please take their name off of the signature. So they were committing fraud and impersonation in order to get our Senate candidate at the time, Matthew Hoh in North Carolina, off of the ballot. They happened to call the chair of the Green Party while they were pretending to be the Green Party and told him that he needed to take his name off the ballot. The Green Party wanted him to do that. He recorded the conversation. It was brought to court. They were found guilty of basically, I would call it fraud. They called it operating with dirty hands. So this is what the Democrats do. They also advertised publicly for people to manage infiltrators and spies to mess up our petition drives. So yes, this is a very corrupt and dirty system. We happen to be caught by it when we know in advance that there's someone who is breaking the rules that we didn't make. When someone is breaking these rules, we reject that support. In this case, someone posing as a volunteer just dropped off the signatures.
Issue number 4, raised in this email to me from the DNC. I quote, "Last week, Stein was endorsed by David Duke, who said that he made the endorsement after thinking about, quote, what's good for white people, Europeans, close quote." What say you about being endorsed by David Duke?
Apparently he didn't know that I'm Jewish. And who put him up to this is what I'd like to know. And of course, we rejected that out of hand.
Okay. Issue number 5 on this issue, this email from the DNC. Stein has repeatedly said she has no regrets about being a spoiler in the 2016 election, even after everything Trump did in office. See background below, and there's all kind of background below to make this particular point. There's that word spoiler again. I don't like the word, but the issue they raise here, I do want to interrogate. And that is this notion that you could, in this election, you are on the ballot in every single one of these swing states. Speaking of the New York Times, they did an article the other day about you and Cornel West, and I'm blanking on his name now, the Libertarian Party candidate, Chase.
Chase Oliver?
Yes, Chase Oliver,
yes.
Who's been a guest on this program as well. I've invited everybody on this program. You, Cornel West, Chase Oliver, everybody showed up. So this story in the New York Times of the day laid out all the states where these independent third-party candidates are on the ballot and what that might mean for a very close race between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. So they gave you the states where Cornel West is on the ballot, where Jill Stein is on the ballot, Dr. Jill Stein, where Chase is on the ballot. And so this issue that they're raising in this email from the DNC is that you're potentially pulling votes away, back to this issue again, from Kamala Harris, and that you could end up being like Ralph Nader and handing the election to the other guy, in this case, Donald Trump. Your thoughts?
So, number one, if they're concerned about the potential to draw votes away from another candidate, which in my view is wrong from the get-go, for the most part, us independent alternative candidates largely give people who otherwise won't vote a reason to come out and vote. Remember, that's 1 out of every 3. That's largely people of color, low income, younger, who aren't voting. They don't buy the 2 zombie political parties being rammed down their throats. So people deserve those choices. I reject the spoiler framing. But let's look at what the evidence seems to be showing right now. In fact, that we are drawing votes from Trump and not from, to the extent that you accept this framing, it appears to be Trump, according to 2 recent polls, from whom we are drawing votes, particularly in swing states. So I'd say this is just wrong. Most importantly, Democrats can solve this by passing ranked choice voting. If you subscribe to this view that multiple candidates may be taking votes away from each other, which, by the way, you're supposed to do in an election, that's what democracy is about, competing for votes. So that, it's wrong-headed on that count as well. But there's a solution called ranked choice voting, which Greens have been advancing and supporting forever. It lets you rank your choices, and it ensures that you're never taking votes away from someone else that as a candidate who can't can't win. You are never drawing votes away from someone else. And it's a simple system. You rank your choices. If your first choice doesn't win on the first count, then your vote is basically reassigned to your second choice. So there's never a throwaway vote. Votes are never taken from one candidate to another. It's a great system. It's win-win. It's used in about 25 cities around the country. It's used in the state of Maine. Oregon and Washington State are voting on it. But the Democrats are fighting it. Why are they fighting it? Because they want to use fear to extort your vote. They could win our votes. And Kamala Harris is all freaked out because we're attracting the Arab vote. Well, she could attract the Arab vote if she simply stopped killing and massacring children and women and innocent civilians in Gaza. She could win those votes. She doesn't want to talk about that issue at all, so they would rather just blame and shame voters for standing up and voting our values. Don't listen to it. Don't let them talk you into compromising your values.
Let me do two things right quick. I referenced something earlier that I paraphrased, and I'm looking at my notes. I want to give you the exact quote, so I would not be accused of not giving you exactly what was said. And then secondly, when we come forward, now that I, again, not intentionally put her on the defensive to spend 30 minutes answering D and C questions when we come forward, I'm going to let her give you her I'm going to turn my microphone off and just let her run and give you her platform. She can go on the offensive when we come forward in just a second. But finally here, as I said, to close this circle, I referenced this New York Times article that I read that you have not read, that the DNC put as their first point that they wanted me to ask you about regarding your family. This is the exact quote I was referencing when I mentioned your son, who was quoted in the article. One of Ms. Stein's, I'm reading now from the email. One of Ms. Stein's adult sons said in an interview, Tavis, asking not to be identified by name to avoid any personal or professional repercussions from associating with her. Here's the quote from one of your adult sons, quote, "When she told us she was going to run again back in October 2023, we asked her not to," close quote. That is the quote. That was in the New York Times. I read the story a few days ago about the headline was something like, Jill Stein says she's not getting out of the race no matter who asked her, and that quote from one of her adult sons was in the piece. We've already addressed it. I just wanted to give the exact quote so people wouldn't say I paraphrase, because that's what I was doing until I found my notes. Now, that's it. Dr. Jill Stein is here for the rest of this hour. When we come forward, enough of the defense. I will let her go on offense and tell you what her platform is, running as the Green Party candidate for president on November the 5th. You're listening to Dr. Jill Stein on Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know? The United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time. Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 things you should know from BIN News. The accused school shooter who allegedly opened fire at Appalachia High School in Georgia is pleading not guilty. The 14-year-old was indicted on 55 counts related to the September shooting that left 4 dead and injured 9. Former President Barack Obama says America is ready for President Kamala Harris. He campaigned in Detroit, Michigan last night for Harris, along with rapper Eminem, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and more. A Canadian Walmart is closed as police investigate the death of a woman whose body was found inside an oven in the store. Halifax police say they were called to the location where the young woman was found inside a walk-in oven. Police have yet to confirm the cause and manner of death. And a woman in Australia is safe after spending 7 hours wedged upside down between 2 boulders trying to retrieve her iPhone. The woman slipped into a 10-foot crevice in New South Wales. Rescuers say the 23-year-old managed to stay calm throughout the whole ordeal. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 at BINnews.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. I started Blindster in 2010 in my garage after I overpaid for new blinds. I researched the industry, hired my mom, and 14 years later, we're one of the largest retailers of custom blinds in the U.S. Don't pay too much for new blinds. Go to Blindster.com.
Is this the title? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
LeBron James and his son Bronny made NBA history Tuesday night during the Lakers' regular season opener against Minnesota. It was the first time a father and son were on the court at the same time in an NBA regular season game. With 4 minutes left in the second quarter, Lakers coach J.J. Redick subbed in LeBron and Bronny off the bench. They were on the court together for 2 minutes and 41 seconds before Redick replaced Bronny. Bronny was scoreless and did not play in the second half. The Lakers beat Minnesota behind a dominant performance from Anthony Davis, 36 points, 16 rebounds, and 3 block shots. Sad news for Dodgers Nation. Fernando Valenzuela passed away Tuesday night. He was 63. The legendary pitcher was with the Dodgers for 10 of his 17 Major League seasons. He was the National League Cy Young Award winner and Rookie of the Year in 1981. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
All I need is one mic.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. October marks the third anniversary of Mark Ridley Thomas's indictment and suspension from the Los Angeles City Council. Recently, I authored an op-ed about various media actors who continue to abdicate their responsibility to report the truth in Dr. Ridley Thomas's case. I invite you to read the piece on our KBLA 1580 website. Following months of filings, MRT's appeal is finally set for oral argument on November 21st at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. A 3-judge panel will hear and weigh the arguments of government prosecutors and MRT's appellate counsel. They will decide whether prosecutors in the United States Attorney's Office properly interpreted and followed the law, whether the district court judge erred in deciding critical issues of law in ways that prejudiced the trial outcome and denied MRT a fair trial, and whether the verdict in the case should be overturned or whether the case should be remanded back to the district court for a new trial. MRT is seeking an outright reversal of the verdict. I have maintained all along that the U.S. Attorney's Office exaggerated claims of corruption in this particular case. Now, I could be wrong, but I don't think so. Indeed, the U.S. Supreme Court recently delivered a ruling in a case called Snyder that will have major ripple effects on the anti-corruption landscape. In short, the court ruled that there is no criminal act, there is no bribe, if there is no exchange for an official act. The legal statute does not apply to gratuities or gifts absent a quid pro quo agreement between the two parties. As MRT never received monies and no such exchange was ever proven in the government's case against him, I would think that the Ninth Circuit Court has all the runway it needs to rule in MRT's favor following the hearing next month. Ironically, next month is also MRT's 70th birthday, which means that he has spent most of his adult life in love and service to this community. It would be tragic for another court to miss an opportunity to correct the public record in a case that should never have been brought forward in the first place. MRT cannot get these lost years back, but justice delayed does not have to be justice denied. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. As always, we welcome your feedback.
I was so excited when I heard the sandwich was back. What's up? This is Mike.
And this is Celia.
And a little thing we love about the Chick-fil-A Honey Pepper Pimento Chicken Sandwich
is the symphony of flavors. You can always count on that crispy, tender, juicy chicken. It's so good.
My favorite part is the pimento cheese. Topped off with the honey, it all comes together perfectly. I like the original.
I like the spicy chicken fillet. But either way,
you're getting a winner.
The Chick-fil-A Honey Pepper Pimento Chicken Sandwich is back with a bite. Try it with the original or spicy filet, now for a limited time. Real guests paid for their testimonials.
Made fresh daily in the Mert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Green Party candidate for President Dr. Jill Stein, who I put on the defensive for 30 minutes. And so now I want to pipe down and let her go on the offensive to share with you her platform running as Green Party candidate for President. Dr. Stein, the microphone's all yours.
Thank you so much, Tavis. Before we jump in, I just want to know, has anybody tried to control your interview of a presidential candidate or any other candidate before? Is this the first time? Is this routine? Is this like totally exceptional? Is this the DNC just, assaulting your right as a journalist for, the journalism you want to practice?
You want me to answer that?
Yes.
Yeah, as this is the first time I've ever had anything happen to me like this. I think people know who I am, and I'm an independent thinker. As I mentioned earlier, there were 2 other African American journalists earlier this year who were fired for asking Joe Biden questions that were sent to them by the Democratic Party. But this has never happened to me before in my career.
So it occurs to me, is this just something that the DNC does to black journalists? Are they in the business of telling black journalists what they can and cannot talk about in our elections? What's your thought about that?
I have no idea. The only persons that I'm aware of who have gotten caught up in this happen to be African American journalists, and obviously I'm an African American. In case you didn't know, I'm a black man, proudly, unapologetically. So I don't know who else are getting these kinds of emails. I just know what I just shared. That's all I know.
So quick comment. I mean, this goes hand in hand with the heavy hand of censorship, which we're also seeing, exercised on social media and, behind the scenes on legacy media. This is the inverse of censorship. This is actually controlling the message and dictating the message, which is equally an absolute assault on our basic rights of freedom of speech and freedom of the press. If we do not have a free press, basically they want you to be the lapdog press, which means that we don't have a watchdog press. What is the press for? If not to be watchdogs for us in all matters, corruption, foreign policy, etc. This is like what was done to Julian Assange to silence him and punish him for, exposing waste, fraud, abuse, war crimes, etc. on the part of our government. So here is our government basically trying to Assange you, to silence you. And one other question here.
Assange as a verb now.
Yes,
okay.
They're Assanging you.
They're Assanging me. Okay, go ahead.
Let me ask you. So here they are telling you what questions to ask of alternative candidates. Have Kamala Harris and Joe Biden come on your show?
Not as yet.
Do you expect them to?
We have put those requests out.
Okay. And how long have you been requesting?
For a while.
Okay. Do you expect them to come on?
I do not know. That's a question I have to ask of my producers where we are in those conversations, but they have certainly been invited. President Biden was invited early. He's always welcome, of course. And as a candidate, Kamala Harris has been invited, but she has not as yet shown up here.
Well, I got to say, this is why the DNC's heavy-handed assault on our rights of free speech and freedom of the press, their efforts to manipulate this conversation and to silence political opposition, this is why it's backfiring, because that's certainly what I'm saying. I welcome the kind of assault, that the DNC tried to spring on us here. And, this is hardly like a surprise because this is what most of my interviews are about. Mm-hmm. So clearly they are sending these instructions to virtually all press, and they are keeping watch on who is talking, who dares to talk to political independents here. So I say, this is absolutely shameful, and, I encourage people to make your views known about this and take this into account. In my view, parties who tell you that your job is to take marching orders from them and that you do not have the right to stand up for yourself, to vote for the health care you need, for the reparations you need, for the end to the genocide and the endless wars. The DNC, which above all is really instructing people to manipulate this conversation, and instructing people how they need to vote. I'd say they don't even deserve consideration of your vote, given how they are trying to manipulate the democratic process. Okay, so enough about that. Now into our agenda here. Let me start off with our day one agenda, so people get the sense of what we can do. Yes, we will be in a Congress that will be largely bipartisan if we were to win the race. However, there are many Greens running, and if there was a groundswell to bring us into office, there would also be representation in Congress. Nonetheless, there's a lot that the president can do on executive authority, and my version of the presidency is not just being the commander-in-chief, but also being the organizer-in-chief and helping to lift up the power of democracy and the power of people. That includes things like bringing back town hall meetings so electeds have to talk to their voters, not just their donors, which is what they do now. Bringing back meaningful congressional hearings so that the public and the press, as well as the representatives, can actually be educated on the issues. What does genocide look like? You know, because mainstream media is not covering this, and so many people don't have the benefit of what's going on. The assault on hospitals, on sick people, you know, hundreds of people now in northern Gaza whose hospitals are under siege, and they're, you know, people in hospital beds are now, you know, the held hostage and under assault. It's just, you know, children are being shot in the head routinely now by the Israeli Defense Forces. You know, some 2,000 people, something like that, have been killed just in like the last couple of weeks as this war extends into Lebanon. People need to know what's going on. So we will bring back congressional hearings. We want to empower the people to be the driver of our democracy and to break the stranglehold that big money, corporations, super PACs, AIPAC, etc., the weapons contractors, the stranglehold that they have on our political system right now. And let me mouth off here for a second, because we know that over 68%, actually, I think was the number, of Americans want an immediate ceasefire and a diplomatic solution, and nearly as many want a weapons embargo to Israel. Of an embargo on all military assistance at this point, which in fact is what U.S. law actually calls for. So there's enormous momentum for that, but you won't see it reflected in Congress, not one bit. There's just a tiny handful of people that are not voting for, you know, continuing flow of weapons, etc. So we the people need to be represented here, and there are things that the president can do to help jumpstart our representation and break the stranglehold. So let me talk about a couple other things we can do on day one, just so people realize what is at hand here and the potential power we have. Let me also just start with two quotes. One from Frederick Douglass, that power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. So this is how progress is made. You know, this is, you know, the parties of abolition going into the Civil War. It was the abolition parties who were labeled spoilers, who were, just vilified for daring to challenge the criminal institution of slavery. So this is how the economic and political elites always try to block progress, try to block any challenge to their stranglehold on power. It's absolutely essential. As Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. We are that demand politically. And the second quote is from Alice Walker, the noted novelist, human rights advocate, Palestinian rights advocate, poet. Her quote that I always remember, this is paraphrasing a little bit, is that the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. We have enormous power, not only the numbers, like who want an immediate ceasefire and a weapons embargo, the number who want a healthcare as a human right, which would actually save us $500 billion a year. It's outrageous that we don't have it. The numbers who want higher education, free, which we should also have. There are huge numbers of people, if the word got out, and that 1 out of every 3 eligible voters who's not voting knew that there's reason, there's actually representation for you. When we did the Breakfast Club a couple of weeks ago, practically every comment, and there's now over 20,000 comments, they say, wow, I didn't know there was a campaign that's actually sticking up for us. I wasn't going to vote. I am now going out to register green, and I'm voting for the Stein Ware campaign.
Hold that thought 1 second. Speaking of Stein Ware campaign, Professor Butch Ware has joined this conversation. When we come forward, we'll bring him in and let the two of them share more about their platform as the Green Party candidates for President and Vice President of the United States. You're listening to Tavis, Smiley, and I'm glad about it.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
My name is Anton Moore. Around here, we have hardworking people that just need a break. Whether it's investing in small businesses or making housing affordable, Vice President Harris gets it.
Kamala Harris is making sure black men have the tools to build generational wealth.
She'll put a policy in place that gives 1 million forgivable loans to help entrepreneurs, including black entrepreneurs, start their own businesses. She also plans to give $25,000 in down payment assistance for first-time homeowners and crack down on racial bias in home appraisals. Harris's plan will help black men own more assets so we can build long-term wealth.
This is what an investment in my community looks like. We're trying to build generational wealth. No get-rich-quick schemes, no scams, no one-time check, none of that. Vice President Harris got our back. I'll be there on November 5th. Will you be there?
I'm Kamala Harris, candidate for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Harris for President.
That morning chill means truck season!
5 more minutes.
No snoozing. Do it all in a Chevy Colorado or Silverado, including the class-leading range of the Silverado EV.
Talking to me?
Work, play, hauling, off-roading, a Chevy truck can take it all.
Okay, I'm up.
Get 1.9% financing on all 2024 Silverado 1500 and Colorado pickups when you finance with GM Financial. Chevrolet, together, let's drive.
1.9% APR for 36 months. Monthly payment is $28.60 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment 24.5%. Plus finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Taking retail delivery by 9/30/24.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well-trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone, and should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Let's get back to more of this rich dialogue with Tavis Smiley.
Let me just say hello very quickly. I want to give Dr. Jill Stein 2 more minutes to just make a couple more points he wanted to make, but I want to say, Professor Butch Ware, welcome to our program, sir. How are you today?
Man, I'm doing well. It's an honor, a privilege, and a pleasure. I got to say, Tavis, you've been a huge influence on me as a thinker and as a public intellectual. So, humbling moment for me, for real.
You are kind. I appreciate that. We'll let you have your say in just a couple minutes here. 2 more minutes, though, right quick for Dr. Stein to finish your list.
So great to be with you, Bush,
Yes,
and I'm going to turn it over to you momentarily. I'm just doing a lightning round here on our day one agenda by way of clarifying, what our issues are, what our agenda is. So on day one, we call Benjamin Netanyahu and tell him that basically the genocide is over, that the flow of all weapons and military support to Israel is done. He needs to comply with the International Court of Justice and with international law. Not only the genocide, but the occupation, the ethnic cleansing, the home demolitions, etc. That's all done, over and done, and we need to negotiate the way forward.
Day one.
On day one.
Okay,
in fact, even before day one.
Keep
it's
going.
like if we win, it's the day after the election.
Keep going.
Okay, we declare a climate emergency, which then unleashes over $500 billion every year to create the jobs that we need in the critical areas, critical sectors of the economy: energy, transportation, agriculture, and housing. We cancel all payments, all repayments of federal student loan debt through the Higher Education Act. We restore the processing of asylum claims at the U.S.-Mexico border. We grant amnesty to everyone serving time for nonviolent use, cultivation, and possession of cannabis. So cannabis is legalized. We direct the DEA to address drug use as a public health issue, not a criminal issue. We pardon and release political prisoners and whistleblowers. We introduce legislation to raise the federal minimum wage to $25 an hour and keep workers out of poverty. We introduced legislation for a national improved Medicare for all bill and policy. I will just kind of scan through here. We commit to vetoing any legislation that would break strikes. We introduced legislation to use ranked choice voting in all elections. We launch a national program to review what happened under COVID and how do we rebuild a U.S. epidemic and pandemic response. We federalize all police misconduct investigations so that killer cops will be held accountable. We publish the Equal Rights Amendment to bring it into law. And we end the embargoes, the economic embargoes in Cuba and Venezuela. We call for a nuclear summit on nuclear disarmament, and we work towards enforcing the nuclear ban treaty.
We were just talking about that. We just talked about that on our program yesterday, given that we are pushing toward the 60th anniversary of Dr. King's Nobel Peace Prize speech about nuclear power, nuclear proliferation. When we come forward in our remaining moments, you will hear from her running mate, Dr. Jill Stein's running mate, Professor Butch Ware, on Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom.
My name is Anton Moore. Around here, we have hardworking people that just need a break. Whether it's investing in small businesses or making housing affordable, Vice President Harris gets it.
Kamala Harris is making sure black men have the tools to build generational wealth. She'll put a policy in place that gives 1 million forgivable loans to help entrepreneurs, including black entrepreneurs, start their own businesses. She also plans to give $25,000 in down payment assistance for first-time homeowners and crack down on racial bias in home appraisals. Harris's plan will help black men own more assets so we can build long-term wealth.
This is what an investment in my community looks like. We're trying to build generational wealth. No get-rich-quick schemes, no scams, no one-time check, none of that. Vice President Harris got our back. I'll be there on November 5th. Will you be there?
I'm Kamala Harris, candidate for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Harris for President.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Sometimes he fails at fitting in, but we're okay with that. You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
We got 5 minutes left in this conversation. I want to give most of that 5 minutes, if not all, and she's okay with it, to Professor Butch Ware. I'll start with this and take it anywhere you want to take it in these 5 minutes. Why did you accept the invitation to run with Dr. Stein as her running mate, Professor Ware?
I'll start with the fact that I asked her a question about reparations when I interviewed her on my Instagram Live before I joined the campaign. And she said they behave as though it's incalculable, but it's been calculated many times by specialists. It is between $10 and $13 trillion that America owes to black people, and I am in favor of cash payments. So sis had me at hello with that, response. From there, we were having a conversation about something she just discussed a moment ago, treating the drug epidemic in America as a public health problem rather than an opportunity for the carceral state to lock brothers up and have us pre-make biscuits for 15 cents an hour so that KFC can get a little richer. And when she talked about this, she said that one of the side effects of treating it as a public health problem is that you would disempower the cartel cartels in Central America. So I happen to be married to a Mexican-American woman. My mother-in-law was unable to see her family for 23 years because she was afraid to go visit her family in Mexico lest she not be able to see her kids back here upon her return. I said, do you understand that you just provided a magic bullet that keeps my cousin out of jail and reunites my wife's family? If we treat the drug problem in America not with criminalization but as public health, then you disempower cartels, you stop the flow of migration that's being caused by destabilization. Her policies towards American imperialism, she said she wanted to dismantle the American empire. So when she said that, that means no more CIA assassinations, no more Patrice Lumumbas, no more military juntas destabilizing not just Latin America, but Africa. Let's not forget that it was Barack Hussein Obama who put out the hit on Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, and there is now an actual live African slave trade in Libya because of this first black president. This first black president that on his watch did nothing when Trayvon Martin was stalked and hunted by a grown man. So the reality is that the Democrats, Team Blue, has been no friend of black folks. Malcolm said of the liberal, he said that the liberal is a fox. It bares its teeth and you think that it's smiling at you, but you are on the menu. The conservative is the wolf. It bares its teeth and you know its intent. The truth of the matter is that the black community has been stuck between two predators that differ only in the modality of the hunt. And the Green Party is here to actually put restorative justice, reparations, and actual black liberation back onto the agenda. The last thing that I want to say on this is that I'm personally offended at the weaponization of blackness in this moment in the Harris candidacy, because blackness is being weaponized in support of a white supremacist genocide. Malcolm X, El-Haj Malik Shabazz, said of Zionism, he said that this is a white Jewish population being empowered by white imperialists to move brown Arabs off their land. Like every other black radical, Malcolm understood Palestinian liberation as integral to black liberation and as a part of an overall anti-imperialist struggle. And blackness itself was an identity that was forged on plantations in opposition to white supremacy. So the idea that now black girl magic would somehow be employed to justify over 220,000 dead Palestinians in a place that Thomas Sankara and Nelson Mandela said that we will not be free as Africans until the Palestinians are free, I find that outrageous and odious as a historian of Africa.
Professor Butch Ware, you did it in 5 minutes, and I deeply appreciate it. I got 30 seconds left, and I'll give to the candidate herself, Dr. Jill Stein. I just want to get you on the record once more. You are not getting out of this race between now and November 5?
We are getting into this race, and we've only just begun. And this race actually doesn't end after this race either. This is a long-term commitment to make our democracy work for us, to bring African Americans and Arab Americans and elder Americans and children, to create an America that's working for all of us, and that means a world that's working for all of us. And it is such a delight to be in this journey here with Dr. Butch Ware. And, check us out at Jill Stein 2024.com and join the peaceful revolution whose time has come.
Everybody is welcome on this program, and all they need to do is to accept the invitation, as did Dr. Jill Stein and Professor Butch Ware. They are the presidential, vice presidential candidates or running mates for the Green Party this time around, and I'm delighted in this conversation. Dr. Stein, thank you for coming in studio. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much,
Professor
Tavis.
Butch Ware, good to have you on the phone, man. Thank you for your time.
Hey, you got to get me back on the show now, Tavis. I only got 4.5
minutes. We will do it again. We'll do it again. I'm out of time. Until tomorrow, thanks for tuning in. Keep the faith.
Thank you.